I saw two women exercising by the lake this morning and didn't think anything of it at first. Now that a few hours have passed and I'm a little more clear-headed about the matter, I still don't think anything of it, but I think that it might turn out to be the sort of thing that's worth keeping in mind, just in case there is something about it worth thinking something of in the future. One hears stories, or I at any rate hear stories, about people looking at things and thinking nothing of them at first, only for a few weeks to pass and for them or for someone else to suddenly think a great deal of the things indeed. I regularly look back on things which, at first I assumed were just there, like this church from my dream last night, only to realise they were crucial. I'm sure you have had similar experiences. If you are someone like me, for whom what is going on is an elaborate metaphor for what is really going on and needs to be found out, all of life turns into a search for these sorts of things. I am telling you this while making lunch, which sadly today leads to me smearing grease on my expensive camera lens and, in a hurried attempt to clean the glass, massaging the grease even deeper into its surface, in a way which the internet confirms has irrevocably ruined my expensive lens forever. It's difficult to make food one-handed. Just think of how difficult it must be for one-handed people to make food. This past year I've had something G.K. Chesterton said about food revolving in my mind. There is no greater proof that human life is ridiculous, I am paraphrasing him, than having to sustain oneself by pushing plant matter into a hole in one's head. I have for the last year at least been unable to think about eating except in those terms. My eating habits have changed a lot in that time, perhaps as a side effect of all my other habits changing. I no longer get to sleep if I eat in the evenings, so I make sure to fill up before midday. I eat way less carbs and way more beans, lentils and seeds. I mix a lot of off-kilter ingredients into the sauces, peanut butter into this tofu sauce for instance. I used to be afraid of sensory input which would damage the overall unity of a thing, but now, as I catch the U-Bahn, I feel like the unity of a thing is liable to improvement through extraneous sensory input. I used to find it impossible to listen to music or read books outside of silent, dark and preferably locked rooms. This past year, though, I've found myself much more able to accept the inevitable interruptions and imperfections that come with each experience. I try to see the annoyances, grease on lenses and foul weather, as pieces of the sought-after experience, and not as distractions from it. No one has ever had a pure experience, I think, not of any artwork, emotion, or other person. It's all a sloppy approximation of it. As soon as you label one part of life, and another part of life the distraction from it, you doom yourself to error and disappointment. The sound of a train while one reads a book about ancient Ghana, the glare of an LCD screen while one listens to Estonian folk chanting, they are all a part of it, the thing I'm interested in, the thing which all art communally gets at. I want to make my soul generous enough to accept things which are messy, uneven and jarring, without also surrendering all sense of taste, I think to myself as I walk around. I am currently reading Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, which, as well as transporting me to ancient Rome, is also transporting me to 18th century London. Funny that Gibbon chose to write a book about an empire in decline, while all empires of Europe, his most extravagantly, were expanding. And funny to be reading it after the decline of those empires. I sit next to this bench as a futile protest against the state of European civic benches and watch a man explain something about the street to his children. I wonder whether, in all history, a child has ever listened with attention to anything anyone has ever told them. I must have been about 15 before any information, visual or oral, sunk into my head. As suspicious as I am of any reductionist statements like the one I'm about to give you, I believe the purpose of education should be to hold the child's attention, no matter how or with what. As long as something holds a child's attention, it doesn't matter what it is, they will learn from it. I'm sorry that all this footage is so shaky. As well as smearing my expensive lens with grease and rubbing it with the scratchiest cloth in my apartment, ruining it forever I'm sure, I have set my camera's image stabiliser to the wrong focal length, almost as a subconscious religious act of self-sabotage. I've been having a reoccurring nightmare recently, where Ray Parker Jr. asks me, over and over again, "Who you gonna call?" And I respond, "Ghostbusters!" But he says, "Wrong again, bitch!" and chops off my fingers, one by one, with gardening tools. There are more important things in what I just told you than this last image, but this is the one I want to leave you with. Kind regards, Coco.